Guys, this is Savannah from earthandwater.co. I'm here today with a guest, Josh Work, also known as the Emotional Support Viking on TikTok and Instagram. Josh, how are you
Please.
doing today?
Oh, happy to be here. Good about yourself.
I'm doing good as well. You want to tell us a little bit about how you got to doing all of this? Because I mean, you're starting to gain some traction on TikTok, especially with emotional support, right?
hmm
You come in and almost all of your videos are you in this ice bath and you pop up and you give us some kind of motivational speech, tell us we're doing a good job, and then you go back under, and it's really touched my heart and on several occasions. I know I've needed to hear that stuff, and so many of us do need to hear that stuff. We're out here essentially drowning in our own ice bath but not enjoying it.
Well, I'm very happy to hear that I've helped you and helped so many others too. I think under some description, I kind of come by it naturally. I've always been the friend in the group growing up that others would turn to for advice or guidance or anything like that. The ice baths I started doing about a year ago when the swamp cooler at the restaurant I work at went out for about a week. So I'm the chef there. I was cooking in about 130-degree ambient air temperature,
Oh,
standing over 350-degree fryer. And I had seen a couple TikToks about the merits of ice baths. So one day I was like, that's enough of that. I'm going to go to Home Depot, get myself a stock tank and some ice, and got in and got hooked.
that's amazing. Yeah, I had asked if that was hard because, I've also seen the benefits of taking cold showers and whatnot. And I've been trying to like wean myself off of really hot showers because I've always been a scald me please type of person. And it's hard. And I asked you if it was hard, and you were like, no, it was a piece of cake. But now that I know the whole story, I bet it was a piece of cake. 130 degrees over a steaming oven or stove top. That's pretty rough.
Yeah, ice bathing in general is definitely the thing you want to kind of ease yourself into. Obviously, I didn't go that route, but since I've gotten into it, it's been wonderful. It's come in immensely handy. The ice bathing, especially, is good for treating anxiety and stress. It's good for the body as well, but the cognitive benefits have been the biggest thing for me.
Cool. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you've noticed yourself, like the differences since you started doing that?
Well, if we want to get right into it, um, I think one of the biggest things for me is that when I started ice bathing was pretty serendipitous. If you look at someone like Wim Hof, he's kind of the godfather of ice bathing, and he started doing it. And this is where I should bring up a trigger warning for anybody. We're going to get into some self harm here, but he started ice bathing after he lost his wife to suicide. So I had started ice bathing, and Wim Hof, he describes it when he did it. He was walking through a park one day, mourning the loss of his wife. It was during the winter, and there was a cold creek running through the park. And there was this tickle in the back of his head that told him to get in. So he did. And when he got in, he said that everything else that he was worried about, all the stresses, everything else went away. Because when you're in the ice bath, the only thing you can think about is cold. It erases every other thing that you're dealing with.
Yeah.
So for me personally, I had started ice bathing just about a year ago to today. And it was a couple of weeks later that one of my good friends, someone that I worked with at the restaurant for the last 7 years, decided to end their life as well. And at this point, I was already taking the ice baths. I was feeling some of the benefits. And I think being in that cold water helped me to metabolize that loss. And I would like to say that that was the only time that it's happened in the past 12 months, but I know 6 other people besides him who have decided to make that choice in the last year as well. And
Wow.
whether 2 others of them were good friends. One I grew up with, one I worked with for a number of years as well. Others were people in the community, and I live in a small mountain town. Everyone knows each other. Everyone knows everybody's business. But I think being in the ice bath helped me personally to kind of deal with some of that stress. And on the back end of it, I wanted to kind of process my own grief and do something positive with it and be able to hold the space and a platform where people can drop by for, just a little bit of positivity, something silly. If you need to talk, by all means, please reach out and help. I'm here to help.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that with us. We just met each other, and people so often they want to skirt around the deep stuff, and which is the reason that I do podcasts anyway, because it's so hard to find people in your day-to-day life, for most of us anyway, not all of us, who we can have these serious, real conversations with, because people are uncomfortable with emotions, not only sharing their own, but allowing others the space to share theirs. So I really appreciate you sharing with us, because that's deep. We all have experienced loss at some point. So that's something that all of us can take something away from. Maybe we can try an ice bath next time.
Yeah. Well, it can be hard to open up, especially to people that well. I can attest to that personally. So sometimes having a friendly stranger that's hanging out in a nice bath, maybe he's got in his beard, that can add a little levity, make it a little easier. It's a little less personal, but it gets the ball rolling.
Absolutely. I've noticed that too. It's sometimes easier to talk to a stranger about serious things that you would never talk to your closest loved ones about, especially if it involves them.
Yeah. That's the most difficult of all.
Yeah. No, my whole goal here with the podcast is to help people heal, because the world, there's no secret. We have a lot of issues in the world, and the invention of the internet is so recent that on one hand, most of us don't remember the world before it. On the other hand, it's a brand new world where we're finally able to communicate with everybody and see everybody's stories. I know I, for one, felt ridiculously alone before the internet came about. And then as soon as I was able to, I just shut myself off into my computer for years and years and years. And that's probably what saved me from making one of those decisions as well, that so many have.
Yeah, I think we're probably thereabouts in the same age range. I was briefly around before the internet became a thing.
Right.
I remember my parents getting, I think it was the Mac OS back then. My brother had worked for a computer company, and he got my parents a computer, got them set up with dial-up internet. And we had the old school AOL with that little key ring and a lightning bolt that would go into it, and that got sound. But yeah, I would say much the same. I was briefly around before the internet came about. And then likewise, about the time I was in middle school, I got set up with MySpace and Facebook, and kind of dived into it deep for a couple of years, took a couple of years off. And now I'm kind of straddling this line where I want to engage in it, because that's the way that humans interact so much these days. But I think it's also healthy to have life outside of that as well.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, go on.
I was just going to prompt you to keep going, because I've seen that you spend a lot of time outdoors.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things that I, I like to keep in mind in regards to the internet is something that Kurt Vonnegut brought up in his book Slapstick, which wasn't one of his favorite books. I personally adore it. But he says that when two people argue, what they're saying is, you're not enough people. We're a tribal social sort of animal that was evolved to live in family groups of 50 or so people. So if you were having a hardship, there was some elder nearby that you could rely on, that not only knew you and your life story, but had pertinent information that they could relay to you in order to help you. Now we live in a day and age where our tribe is 8 billion people. And the internet is, on the one hand, it's a great way to get together with people and interact holistically. And on the other end, it can be very isolating if you end up going down a rabbit hole and isolating yourself from others for too long. I think being able to come together cohesively and understand that, there is no us and them, we're all on team human, and holistically is going to be one of the best things that we can do for our own mental health and stability.
Absolutely. I was talking to a friend about that 2 days ago, because you know, a lot of conversation is a one-way street these days, I've noticed. And which is something I've dealt with my entire life. On one hand, I got better with it for a little bit because I did start finding a couple of people here and there who would listen, and it would be like a two-way street. And then here lately, it's been, I'm an active listener, and people innately notice that and like that, whether they're aware of that's what that is. So people emotional dump on me all the time, which I don't mind. I'm here for it. I've built this whole platform on, yes, let me help you. Yes, like I get it out. Let's find something that'll work. But I have a hard time finding someone that will help me in that same way when I need it, right? And I was talking to her about how we used to live in a village. You had 50 to 100 people to navigate your entire life. And that was it. Like you had those 50 to 100 people that you were interacting with on a daily basis who saw what you were doing every day, and figuring out how to build a relationship with them was a little bit easier because, like you said, if you were having issues with this person, there's 50 more around that you can go over there and like get it off your chest and see what they feel about it and see if you can find common ground and then come back. But these days, I think everybody is so overwhelmed with the amount of people that they have to try and figure out and navigate that a lot of them just shut down.
Yeah, I would say that scale of 50 to 100 people is probably the amount that we've evolved to be able to handle with. And
Mhm.
now that, like I said, 8 billion. So
Mhm.
our brains, there's probably a little bit of a lag time. We're probably all on a little bit of buffering as we're growing. The only change that's constant, we're not done evolving. We're now stretched into an area where we have to evolve socially, and doing that together. Active listening is an important component of that. I've heard it said that oftentimes people only listen until it's their turn to speak again instead
Yeah.
of listening to respond. So actively engaging with each other, holding space for each other to have that cohesive dialogue where we can come together and find some common ground, and learning new methods of evolving humanity, I guess.
Mm. Yeah. We just got to get there, and which comes back to the healing thing. The reason, everybody's overwhelmed, and active listening, oh my gosh, so many social skills that aren't taught in school, aren't taught anywhere, and which all comes back to children, essentially. I could go on forever and I don't know where to start.
Let's begin.
Yeah. The world, we've come to the place where we're at with the world, and it's not a great place. And we're all waking up to it because of the internet and the ability to see outside of our little bubble. Because again, your mindset, your belief system, your view of the world, and how you've constructed it in your mind to be, because everyone lives in their own little world, was completely dependent on those 50 to 100 people and what they knew. And that was all you had to go off and base your view of the world upon. And now we have expanded so quickly, which is great, which is great. So now we're seeing that we have a lot of healing to do as a society, which comes back to healing the individual, which comes back to healing the inner child, because each one of us was a child who, either had their needs met or had their needs not met. And most of us, the children who had their needs not met are the majority. um, and I'm not saying like they didn't have food and shelter. I'm saying like that might have been all they had. But as a society, we've historically shooed children away. Shoo shoo, let the adults talk, go play. Oh, toughen up. Gosh, you cry and whine about everything. All of the things that we've all heard, rushing us through our stories. Spit it out, let's go. We've all heard all of these things, right? And some kids don't pay any attention to it. And they go on and they grow up and they do just fine, but so many internalize that. um, and then they turn into adults, but they're not actually adults, they're still children but in adult bodies, and now they have responsibilities. And then they have, it's their job to formulate the world and make laws and regulations for people. And it ends up being a little problematic because you can't have children like with unhealthy mindsets and trauma that they're still processing and running over in their head that dictates how they treat others and how they believe the world's supposed to work or does work. And yeah, so
Well, my background is in philosophy, so forgive me if I get a little esoteric or long-winded here.
no, I
Uh,
love it. Yeah.
well, for myself personally, I think healing society, healing the individual, healing the inner child, I think it almost needs to start with the individual.
Mm-hmm.
Some of my favorite philosophers are Edmund Husserl, Martin Heidegger, phenomenologists that were involved in states of being. And if you're going to have an authentic state of being towards yourself, you have to have an authentic state of being towards your past. You've grown up in a culture scape, which I'm borrowing from one of your previous episodes, but we've all grown up immersed in this culture scape where there's all these preconditions, things that we're taught that we should do, should not do. We should be this way, we should be that way. And that has helped formulate the way that we view and see the world. And there are undoubtedly traumas back there for most of us, myself personally as well.
Sure.
But if we can adhere to those traumas and find it within ourselves to process them, heal them, understanding that they are an essential component of our being, everything that has happened to us has shaped us. Like we're more than our trauma, we're more than our experiences, but those hold weight into who we are now. So as I am now, I really love and enjoy the person that I've grown up to be. There's things in my past that I wish hadn't happened, things that I wish had happened differently, but if they had happened any other way than the way that they did, I would be, to one degree or another, possibly a very radically different human being than the one I am today. So I have to hold that for what it's worth and carry that into the present and then proceed into the future. And into the future is where we look at healing the other. You heal yourself and then you give that love, that healing that you have to offer to the society at whole, if you have it within you or can reach that sort of audience. But if we start gaining numbers little by little, sooner or later, job's done.
We tip the scale.
Yeah.
Do you remember like have you feel like you've always been in the same pretty well like yeah that happened but I'm gonna move forward or because I know for me I was very stuck in my trauma for a very long time and I was very angry and very like it consumed my entire being and all I could do was sit around and think about it and wonder why did that happen the way it did and why did they do that and why couldn't like why me and and I had to work my way out of that into the mindset that you're talking to right now. You
Yes, absolutely. I would agree. Let's get a little vulnerable here. So my biggest sticking point with my trauma that I've had in the past is that I was sexually assaulted when I was 13. I was at a friend's sleepover and his dad had been going through a divorce for the last couple of years. He'd had a rough time, but he was out there. He was dating again, and I went over for a sleepover at my friend's house. His dad works nights, so he left, and his girlfriend stayed and watched us and went to bed. We stayed up, played video games, we watched cartoons. I fell asleep at some point, and my friend went upstairs to go to bed. And at some point in the night, uh, the girlfriend, who had been a recovering addict, had decided to start drinking and came downstairs to get another beer. And I had something that she wanted, so she took it. And I, being aware of culturescapes where we come from, I'm a 13-year-old boy who's grown up in the United States. I've seen American Pie. Everyone has told me this is something that you should want. Boys can't get raped. This shouldn't be a problem, but I'm terrified and just sick to my stomach while it's happening. I don't know how to understand what's happening. I haven't even had my first kiss yet. And when she was done, she told me that if I told anyone, it would ruin my life. And if she found out that I told anyone, she would make me regret it. So I laid awake the rest of the night. And in the morning, I called my parents to come and pick me up. And they asked if anything was wrong because normally I'd hang out until the afternoon. They'd have to drag me away to go back home. But I just told them I wanted to come home. Everything was fine. And I bottled that up for a long time because I didn't have the life experience to understand what had happened to me. I didn't know how to move forward from it. Like you talk about trauma happening in your childhood, in a lot of ways, when the trauma happens, you get stunted there for a long time.
Absolutely.
And so my friends would come to me for dating advice, and I haven't even started dating yet. I'm holding on to all this trauma myself, but I can speak to them, I can speak to their partner, and being able to kind of be of service to other people was how I started to cathartic some stuff. But personally, anytime I would be in an intimate situation with another, I would have that same sense of stale Chinese food and old beer just flood my nostrils again, and I'd freak out. And it wasn't until my 20s when I finally opened up and told somebody that that had happened that I was able to progress a little bit. I was able to date and maintain a relationship like I hadn't been able to do for the better part of a decade. And it was about that time that I found out that my abuser had passed away. And the first thought that I had was good. And the second thought I had was that that was a human being that had hurt me, sure, but I shouldn't be wishing ill on this other person. And it was at that time that I decided it was time to tell my parents about it. And, you know, I'm the only member of my family that's not from the South. My dad's side of the family is from Texas. My mom's side is from Arkansas. She's a strong Southern woman. She's sweet as can be, but if you mess with her baby, she'll fry green tomatoes you real quick. So she wanted to go out for blood. She wanted retribution, and that it was in being able to explain to her that this thing had happened to me. It was over. It was done. It was in the past. There was nothing that we could do about it. The best thing to do was to let it go and not let it, fester and rot and poison us any further, because it doesn't matter. It's done. It's done. And getting her to let it go helped me to let it go. And after that, I was able to go about life more normally. I still had some learning to do, some coping mechanisms that I still needed to work on. But over time, I was able to sort it all out. And now I've got a wife, I've got a stepson, I've got a whole big family. I've got a life here that's wonderful. But it did take, honestly, probably about 15, 20 years to work through everything. And even
Absolutely.
now is difficult, but I think that's one of the things that is good about vulnerability is if you can pry it open and share it with someone else, the burden shared is lighter. And I've definitely never shared that experience to this wide of an audience, but here we are today, learning and growing together.
Well, we appreciate it completely. I'm glad I could create a safe place for you to be able to share that, because that is some very big things.
And that's what I'm trying to do as well. I figure if we can share with each other, then that encourages other people to share. And the cliche, sharing is caring, but it really truly is.
Absolutely. So many people, because it's not just our culture, it is other cultures, but speaking as an American, I can't really speak a whole lot for other countries that I haven't even visited, but, I know a little bit, but yeah, it's very rampant still. And people still want to hush it. They want to, that didn't happen. Or, come on, please, you're making that up. Or, these are all things I've heard. And
Mm-hmm.
it's more people have experienced abuse, sexual abuse, than haven't. And we're finally, healing is messy, and healing as a society is loud and messy. So,
Mm-hmm.
that's how we come up with like the Me Too movement and amongst other things. The even the LGBTQ stuff, in the news is still part of that sexual healing that we're trying to do as a society so that we can. Are you familiar with the chakra system?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So, root chakra, that's our first one. That's all about stability, having your basic needs met, your food, shelter, all of that, which for the most part, definitely not everybody, nothing's universal, everything's relative. But for the most part, we've met that as a society, and that's what we've been trying to do for the past like several hundred years. Um, Now we're moving into healing the sacral stuff, which is the sexual stuff. And it's uncomfortable, especially in a country founded by Puritans.
Mhm. That's one of the biggest things that has been personally beneficial to me is that anything worth doing was never easy.
Yeah.
Healing inherently messy, especially if we want to talk about healing the society. But having that root chakra met, those basic needs met, like a plant, we're growing. We're not yet ready to flower. We're just a little sprout.
Gosh, we
Uh,
are so small, so
yeah,
tiny in that scheme of things.
yeah. Even on the scale of human history, the United States is brand new.
Yeah.
On the scale of geologic history, humans have been here for a fraction of a second. We
Hmm.
are still learning and growing. We are far from done. There is so much further that we can go and that we can do. And I'm excited to see the changes that we can make. It's going to be ugly at times,
Oh
but
yeah,
that's the nature of the beast.
it is. And we're getting a little bit better every day. But yeah, it's insane how new people don't realize we actually are, because people's egos kind of get up in there, and it makes them hard to see and hear and listen. They don't want to, because they think that they know, they think that we all know. They want to be like, just I don't know why this is popping up in my head specifically, but I hear a lot, the government would never. Are you sure? And that's just part of that newness, because yeah, as a society, we're essentially children, and we're just trusting, I guess.
That's one of my other favorite things from Kurt Vonnegut. Every 100 years, all new people. All of us just got here. We're all just children walking each other home. And I think we tend to get a little narcissistic, perhaps at times. We think that we are the end all be all. But if you look at the perspective of another, not even a human being, for example, there's this book, Ishmael, who I'm blanking on the author's name right now. But in there, he has a parable where someone interviews a jellyfish about the creation of the universe. And it's highly biblical. On the first day, God creates or says, "Let there be light," and runs through the days. And then on the seventh day, God created the jellyfish, and everything was perfect. It's important to be aware of our state, where we are individually, and then encompass that also where we are socially, and always have a scope of the big picture. It's nice to zero in, but what is it? Think globally, act locally. Make the little changes that you can, even in your day-to-day life. Be an active member of your community. Help your neighbor out if you can, and get that momentum going.
Yes.
There's an Icelandic proverb that says, "Even though you travel slowly, you will arrive at your destination." As long as we keep going, progress is progress. If you take 2 steps forward, 1 step back, you still made 1 step forward. Like my mom always said, if you fall down 7 times, stand up 8.
Absolutely. Things take so much longer than people think they do. And they want to give up after that. They're not seeing, I preach that all the time in my yoga classes, because I teach yoga in real life, and which is kind of a branch of this. It all goes together. I don't know.
Mhm.
Uh, but you can't watch a flower bloom. You can't watch a tree grow, but it doesn't look like it moves at all day to day. But then you walk out one day and there it is. We are the same way. We're fancy houseplants. People keep saying that. People don't understand how deeply that is true. Are you familiar with Naruto at all?
A little bit. I do the now to run around the house for my wife.
Yeah. I'll let my geek side out for a second. So essentially it's grown-up ninjas
Mhm.
caring for baby ninjas and teaching them how to be a ninja while bad things are coming left and right. But the overall plot of the story is that everything is for the village, which translates into everything is for the children, because the children are the future. And so, yeah, I talk about all the time about how, because, I have people in my life who they're very angry. They're very, you know, we were talking earlier about how trauma hits you as a child and then you get stuck there in that mindset, in that mentality. You're never able to progress into adulthood because you were too busy trying to figure that out. So they come out, they're very angry. They're very, what about me, crying about me? And I'm like, I hear you, I see you. Um, at the same time, we have to figure out a way to progress from that to the children in your life that you are damaging. Because
Hmm.
you know it, and I can never find the words to get through to them that because I try to tell them, we matter, but we don't matter. It's all about the children. They matter. And, like that doesn't translate well to someone who is still stuck in their trauma from 15, 20 years ago, who is, for all intents and purposes, a child themselves on the inside. They're just, in an adult body. So
Hmm.
they just blow up more and they're like, but I do matter and they were wrong and they shouldn't have. And I'm like, I understand all of that. What you don't see is that you are taking all of that and putting it on the children in your life instead of recognizing that your adults didn't care for you the way they should have. So, we need to take that and instead be the adults for the children in our lives that we should have had.
Yeah, it's all about upsetting the cycle of oh wait, hang on. Where's my words? I'm gonna have a sip of tea real quick.
What are you drinking? What kind of tea?
I am drinking black tea with a little bit of honey from my beehives.
Mm. Are there benefits for that? I mean, of course, there's benefits to that, but are there any specifically, or you just like to drink it?
Oh, I just like to drink it. Though it's worth noting that beekeepers do have the longest life expectancy of any occupation known to man.
Absolutely. It's something about like the buzzing vibrations that you're around all the time, and probably the honey that you're actually consuming a lot of too.
Yeah, the honey's very good for allergies, especially, which is
Mhm.
how I kind of first started getting into bees. I guess my grandfather had been a beekeeper and a winemaker. I started eating honey because I had just terrible allergies as a boy. So the more local, the better. Was able to overcome that. And the bee stings themselves are actually really good for arthritic pain and
Oh,
stuff. Anytime I get stung, it hurts for about an hour, and then the rest of the day, my finger is just titanium.
wow.
But I think the beekeeping also speaks to what you were saying, is that we have to think of ourselves as a hive, so to
Yes.
speak. There is no, there are individual bees, but the bee isn't the organism. Bees are considered a superorganism.
Mm.
It's not the bee that reproduces, it's the colony that reproduces. The queen is kind of the control center. You have your workers, you have your drones, which help propagate the colony. But if one individual bee is stuck in its beeness and not able to contribute to the social whole, that damages the overall health of the hive. So
Exactly.
take yourself, which everyone has to do in their own time. There's a conception in philosophy that is founded or originates from ancient Greece. There's two gods of time. There's Chronos and Kairos.
Mm.
There's chronological time, which is what we're the most familiar with. Today is May 23rd, 2023. Tomorrow is going to be this day. But chirological time is more on the scale of the banana. If you ask, when is the banana going to be ripe? You can't say it's going to be ripe on Tuesday. It might be ripe on Tuesday, but it might be ripe on Wednesday. The banana is going to be ripe when it's ripe. And when somebody is willing or ready to make that change to themselves, that's when it will turn over. Another useful saying that has stuck with me through the years, in my philosophy classes, I used to take copious notes, but I would also write little anecdotes that other students had said in class that I thought were funny. One of them that has stuck with me is, you can lead a horse to water, but you've got to be really strong to drown it. You can't force anybody to make that change themselves, but you can
Mhm.
lead by your own positive example. And hopefully over time, you can maybe get someone to that point. And while you're doing that, you're also got to be thinking about future generations. Like
Mhm.
myself, my son is my stepson. I didn't meet him until he was 13. I missed the diaper and all the cute little tiny game stage. I walked into a teenager, but it has been one of the greatest thrills of my life for the past 8 years to be an example to this young man of what kind of man to be. and I've seen a lot of growth in him. He reminds me a lot of myself when I was his age, which has been really, really cool to see him grow up. But it's always being, I don't even want to say selfless, because helping others helps you as well. Like, it's a mutually beneficial, sustainable system if you can have the right viewpoint and wherewithal to see it through to perpetuity, knowing that it will outlast you. Like the saying, you're sitting in the shade today because someone planted a tree long ago. The good that we do in the world today, we're never going to see all of it come to fruition. That's for someone else. But it's having that ability to understand that we are part of something greater than ourselves that is going to outlast us and benefit someone who we don't even know yet. Or
Absolutely.
maybe never.
Yeah. Yeah. I used to, like I said earlier, I used to be a very angry individual. And like I was a very angry teenager. There you go. Teenager in early 20s. I was very angry. Couldn't get anybody in my life to like hear me, see me, look at me. You know what I mean? So I was just trying to like force them to. And then at some point, something just clicked in my head that, yeah, the only thing you can do is lead by example and show them a better way of doing, being, acting, speaking, listening, all of that. And I know one story when I first started doing anything online, because I carried, because, we started out before the internet. And so I carried notebooks around with me 24/7, and I was always doodling and jotting down words and inspirational things and just, whatever. So that naturally progressed into my blog that I started. And I'm very business oriented in my mind, and so my schedule is my schedule. And if I want it to work, I have to treat it like a job. And my parents one day showed up one night and were like, "Hey, we're going to the beach tomorrow and we have an extra room. Do you want to go?" And I was like, "Okay, sure." So we packed up and left. But I had these blog posts that were scheduled to go out, and I had to get them out because, like, for no other reason than just a schedule I had created in my head, right? And my son at the time was not even a year old. I think he was like 6 months old. And we were in the condo, and it was like rainy or something, and everybody was watching football, just laying around on the couch. And I was working on my computer trying to get this out, and my son was crying. He was fine. He just wanted to be held. He was a baby that we had to hold him from the moment he was born until he was about 2, or he would cry. And he's still very emotional, very melty, and very cuddly. He just needs to be cuddled 24/7. And I've always been a very it's not the mother's job to do everything for the kid. It takes a village. I was not neglectful at all, but my dad got really upset. I was on the computer and I was ignoring him because there are 5 other people doing nothing that see me doing something. Somebody will get him. And well, he jumps up and he turns around and he goes, "What are you doing on that computer anyway?" And in an effort to calm and make light of the situation, I went, "I'm trying to change the world." Yeah, that didn't go over well. And he went on this whole rant about how regular people, like, that's the dumbest thing he's ever heard. Regular people can't change the world. People like us can't do anything about nothing. You have to be born into money. Your family has to be into politics. You have to something, 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 right? And I just remember him being angry and me just being just struck by it, because I was like, he actually believes that. He believes that he's small and that he can't do anything, and that he is at the mercy of everything and everybody else around him. And so that's kind of like what really kicked me in gear to try to show him. And I'm not like, I don't know, on one hand, the only people who have ever changed the world are the ones that were crazy enough to think that they could. On the other hand, I am practical and I understand that that's a big job. And but yeah, you focus on, you think globally, but you act locally. So I've been trying to get focused on the community and try to preach that, like farmers markets and beekeeping and grow your own food.
I am stifling a cough. Hold, please.
You're fine.
I didn't want to cough over you while you're talking.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
sorry you choked that up. I'm sorry that you held that in for so long.
um, yeah, that reminds me of there's another proverb that I remember. There's a boy on a beach, and there's a whole bunch of starfish that have walked on the beach, and the boy is walking down the beach, picking up starfish and chucking them back into the ocean. And his father sees him doing this and comes out to tell him, "Hey, what are you doing?" He's like, "Oh, I'm trying to save all these starfish." And the father points out, "But there's so many starfish. There's no way you can possibly make a difference. You're only a small child. How are you going to do this?" And the boy picks the starfish up, chucks it back into the ocean, and says, "Made a difference for that one." Having the viewpoint that you can change the world is very powerful. The fear that we can't, I think, is where we get limited sometimes, because anything perceived as real is real in its consequences. So if we think that we're inconsequential and we can't make a difference, we never will. If we think that someone who disagrees with us politically, religiously, ideologically in some way, if we regard them as different and count them as an enemy, then we have made them an enemy to ourselves. And that's going to control how we react to these people in the future. So there's these little mental minutia that we need to try to unravel little by little as best we can. And I think the precognizance to be aware of that, just a little bit of awareness. If we can spark a touch of awareness in people that this exists and is a thing, and could be a thing that you could undo in yourself and benefit others, that's how you get the ball rolling.
Absolutely. Awareness is the absolute bottom line key to it all. Just being aware of your thoughts, your beliefs, your words, your actions, and asking yourself, does that align with what I want? Does that align with who I feel like I am, who I want to be? You can all day long be like, well, that's how I was raised. Okay, but is that how you wanted to be raised?
Is that something you want to perpetuate?
Yeah, yeah. Is that how you want to raise the future? Because that's how it
That's
all is.
one of the things that I like about food. Like you brought up Naruto, my nerd kingdom is food. I've been in the restaurant industry for the last 15 years. And one of the things that I like about food is that really good food has always come from hardship. It's been people that didn't have a lot that they could bring together, and they managed to meld it almost alchemically into something beautiful. Think sausages. It's leftover parts of an animal, but it could be expressed so beautifully. Um, on the flip side of that, you have whole roasted animals, which is something that we've done here in the US a lot. We've always been pretty well off. So we've got steak, burgers, pizza, we got big food and lots of it. We haven't had to culturally craft these exquisite meals that have come from simple origins but have expressed themselves beautifully. And I think the next step beyond that is that food is a great way of breaking down borders. If you sit down and break bread with someone from a different culture, different society, someone who thinks differently than you, but you sit down, break bread together, have a meal, you start talking, you see people are pretty much the same everywhere. We all have the same fears, wants, hopes, dreams, aspirations. We want to have enough food on our table. We want our loved ones to be cared for. We're all quintessentially the same. The foods that we eat might be different, the ways that we think might be different, but we are one and the same.
Absolutely. We're big foodies too over here. My husband does a lot of cooking, a lot of grilling, a lot of smoking.
Yeah. I'm the chef in the family, but my wife is the best cook I've ever known.
Oh, wow, that's so nice. I've tried for years and years and years and years and years some people have talents towards things, and some people can cultivate talents towards things, and some people can learn that. Man, I have studied trying to cook for years, and I still burn cereal.
Mm-hmm. I that's much how I feel the same about baking. My mom was a baker by trade. She baked for 40 years. And baking is a lot more like chemistry. It's very scientific. And cooking, I can understand how flavors mix together and throw a little bit of this to counteract that. This is too salty. Let's add some acid. Boom, 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 boom. That I get. But that quarter teaspoon that I've got to put into a cinnamon roll dough to make it just right breaks my brain every single time.
Yeah, and it makes no sense. My husband's always like, "How did you mess this up? Did you follow the recipe?" I'm like, "I did. I did. I read it 3 times. I don't know." But yeah, which has created all of its own problems that we could probably do we could do a whole episode on food, honestly.
If you have me back for food, I got you.
All right, cool. Because there's a lot of emotional healing trauma type of stuff that goes with food as well.
Especially
Everybody's
your child, if you want to recreate something, that's one of the things about really good food is it always harkens back to a memory that we have. It could be a memory that we're creating, but if you look at like the movie Ratatouille, his ratatouille tasted so good because it was made from the cookbook that his mother wrote while he was a child. Good food calls us back to a state perhaps before we suffered some sort of trauma. Maybe that's why we become aversive to a particular food for some time. But if we're able to go back and have an olfactory experience about our childhood in correlation to something good, then perhaps we can use that as a template to unravel the bad that was done in the meantime. And I think looking to that trauma, another quote that stands out to me is you can't understand the darkness by flooding it with light. Shadow work is not for the meek. You have to sit in there and understand it, but the light has to grow out of it. You can't force it into it. It has to come from within. Like the root chakra, that seed's got to sprout, put some roots down, and then we can start growing up.
absolutely. People are, yeah, shadow work is what it takes to really move through all of this stuff. You can't, because then we get into a toxic positivity where you're just shoving it down, piling happiness on top of it, rainbows, unicorns. Nope, not looking at the rest of it.
Good, I'm fine, and nothing's wrong forever.
Yeah. But it's always still going to be there. But yeah, people are afraid of that. I was talking to my aunt the other day about my yoga classes and how it's really hard because yoga's become an exercise for a lot of people. And because they look at it as an exercise, for one, a lot of people don't want to put the work towards that at all. And then for two, the people who do want to put the work towards that would rather spend their hour on the treadmill or lifting weights or something that they feel is more productive, because it's the yin and the yang, right? And yang, our society is very yang oriented. They focus on the hustle and they reward the hustle and go and do and how productive can you be. So what I teach is more of the philosophy side of things. It's more of a yin yoga. It's yin restorative. So we sit in the pose. Most of our poses are done on the floor, either sitting or laying down. And we hold them for about 2 minutes, give or take, to let our body adjust, like lots of reasons. But in that time, I'm guiding people through breathing exercises and relaxing techniques and posture and alignment and all of these internal workings. And my aunt was like, people don't like that because people don't want to sit with their thoughts. You're letting them, you're giving them space to be able to sit with their thoughts and work through their things, which is exactly what everyone needs to do to heal. But it's also hard and uncomfortable and scary even at times.
I made a TikTok about that just the other day. It's better to live a cruel truth than a comfortable delusion. And oftentimes people don't want to be told the truth because the truth will destroy their illusions. But we're quote unquote happy because we're spending all of our time not sitting with our thoughts, avoiding our thoughts, hiding from our thoughts. I think the argument can be made that that's not happiness at all. That's just ambivalence at best. And looking at it internally, personalizing it for yourself and understanding that, and then growing out of that is where you can come to an authentic state of happiness. But sitting with your thoughts is oftentimes uncomfortable.
Especially in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
But that's how you really learning how to hang out with just yourself is how you find true self-love and
Yep.
appreciation. for who you are and who you have become and everything you've endured and everything that you're going to do and want to do, and you figure out your goals and what you want, and it's just beautiful if you can just get past the discomfort. And, stretching's the same thing in yoga. People, it's painful at first to even sit in the floor, and then you start trying to reach your toes and you're like, oh, I don't know, this hurts.
Yeah.
But once you keep doing it and you keep doing it, it gets a little bit easier, and it gets so easy to the point to where you literally crave that stretch.
That's much the same for me in my ice bath. I obviously have a fondness for getting comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
The more damage we can do to our comfort zone, the better we are as individuals and as people.
Mm. Yeah, the more you can grow, the bigger things you can have and do and be. It's all about being finding comfort in the discomfort, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
People all the time, they're like, how do you get up on stage and talk? And I'm like, well, I one day I realized that nobody wanted to, but I also realized that somebody needed to, because the people who already weren't in the right place vibrationally or like intentionally. So somebody gotta do it.
Yeah. Somebody's got to do it, and I've got the right state of mind for it, so might as well.
And most of it is just showing up, literally
Mm-hmm.
just like I don't know if we had started recording yet or not, but when I told you this, but this is the first episode I've ever hosted on a podcast. I've done podcasts for years and years and years. Being a guest is really no big deal to me at this point. I just show up and follow their lead. But as a host, you have to take the lead. And man, I am only just now getting comfortable with this. I have sweated and shook from we started, but and that's just how it is. It's going to be uncomfortable at first, always, no matter what it is. It's going to be uncomfortable at first.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned show up. Kyle Cease, he's an actor and comedian. He also does a lot of motivational speaking. And one of my best friends, she's practically my sister, her and her little brother have gone to see him give his motivational talks a couple different times now. And the second time they went and saw him, my friend Christian was lucky enough to be in the elevator while he was going up, and he just turned to him and was like, "Hey, Kyle." And this guy from years before was like, "Oh, hey, Christian, what's up, man? How's it going?" So he had the cognizance to remember this guy from years apart, which I think is just a cool story.
Absolutely.
But one of the big things that he talked about that particular time was showing up. The cliche that we miss 100% of the opportunities that we don't show up for. The most important thing is to just show up. Leap and the world will throw you a net. And Vonnegut talks about that as well. Like, we're all constantly jumping off of cliffs and working on our wings on the way down.
Yeah.
It's not be comfortable, but it's the only way to do things.
Winging it is exactly my philosophy for everything. Like I don't play, people. Yeah, I've been on a lot of podcasts. Some people just they jump in and run with it, and that's the type of person I've always been too. Other people, they write out a whole script, and they will interrupt your thought to move on to the next bullet point in their script, and it's like, man. But I think winging it is a lot better because it's authentic. You know,
Mm-hmm.
we're all lost. I was telling my son the other day, I was like, look, because he's brilliant, he's too smart for his own good. But I was like, look, you're only level 8. I'm level 32. I only just now became a grown up. Uh, Nobody knows what they're doing ever. And that's the thing, like, you see people on TV, you see people in politics doing this, doing that, whatever. They look like they have all of their life together. People on social media, people everywhere. They look like they have their life together. Literally nobody completely has everything together. We are all just building our wings on the way down, like, and trying and hoping that we get it done fast enough before we hit the ground.
I think that maybe is the point where you you progress into adulthood, is that understanding that nobody knows what they're doing, and we're all just doing our best to act like we know what we're doing.
Yep.
But like you said, authenticity. I think winging it, not having a plan, that opens you up to a whole bunch of different other experiences. If you have a roadmap and you're planning on driving from point A to point B and you want to take this straight line, you're going to get where you want to go. But maybe there's this really cool point over here that you want to drive off and take a tangent to, and then you end up meeting somebody else and have this interesting conversation. And you have to remain open to all the experiences that life has to give you. And for myself personally, trust that the ones you're getting are the ones that you're meant to have.
Absolutely. Well, this has been great. I really appreciate you spending this hour to talk with us about all of this. And I know we've done some good here. Would you like to tell people where they can find you? Would you like to leave everybody with a last piece of advice? If you could give a piece of advice or encouragement or whatever to the whole world, what would it be?
It would be to keep trying. Like, no matter where you're at, no matter where you're going, if you're showing up today, if you're doing your dead level best to continue, progress is progress. You're not going to get there overnight, and you're not going to always be able to stay there. Like, I think what I talk about a lot with the mental health is that mental health is not an area that you get to one day and then your work is over. Yeah. It's constant maintenance. You're always going to be having to look out for it and maintain it. Your work is never done, but the work is enjoyable.
Absolutely. The only constant is change.
Mm-hmm. The only sentence that is always true through all times in history is this too shall pass.
Everything ends. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Would you like to share where people can find you? And I'll link it below, of course.
I think it's just TikTok. Hi, Thea. This is my dog. This is our youngest. She's a Newfoundland, Irish Wolfhound, Bloodhound, Pyrenees mix. She turns 2 next Monday. But yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I love big dogs.
Yeah, she's a nice baby. But yeah, I can be found on TikTok. That's Emotional Support Viking, periods between the words. I'm in my ice bath. I'm taking recordings of water and stuff. There's lots more of these big dogs and cats and bees and chickens and everything else I got going on here.
Bears. I saw you chasing a bear.
I chased a bear away just last night.
Where are you located?
What's that?
Where exactly are you located?
I'm in Evergreen, Colorado.
Colorado. Cool.
Yeah. I grew up road, and I strangely enough grew up chasing bears because I've seen a couple times where out of towners would move here, see a bear, not know how to deal with it. It's getting in their trash can. They overreact and shoot it. So started chasing bears to try to give them a healthy fear of people so they don't have to get shot like that.
Yeah.
So far, I've only been charged once, but I've chased many bears in my day.
Super cool. And you can see all of that on his TikTok.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, thank you.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here, and we'll talk to you later.